Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. I debated an atheist on a Facebook comment and I'll expose the discussion so you can hear it for yourself. So I'll narrate exactly what I said and then it will be followed up by an atheist response. So the argument starts with the Muslim reply. So the Muslim reply is, so you really expect me to believe a universe came from nothing? This is what I said to an atheist. And an atheist wrote back in a response and said, we didn't come from nothing. We came from the slow march of evolution over billions of years, which came from the chemistry formed in the stars caused by the physics of our universe. Just because you don't understand something doesn't mean God did it. So my response is, well, your atheist professors are confused about it being from absolutely nothing. May I ask, from those very early chemistry, can you show us how nature itself can create the laws of physics, gravity, energy, mass, then amino acids, proteins, molecules, the earth, ecosystems, bacteria, animals, plants, apes, human beings? Please give us a lab experiment of such a universe being created with all its life forms and orders in a miniature universe. In science laboratory, just go and experiment, see if you can do it. Surely if this is how it all took place, you can demonstrate it in a replication for us. I will become an atheist any day if you can show this. The atheist wrote back and said, I can recreate the universe in a bottle just for you so you don't need to do any work. I bet I should have to demonstrate that the world is round and that your ancestors were once primates. So he basically says he can create it in a bottle, the universe. So my response to him was, guys, did you see that? Did you see what he said? He says he can create a universe in a bottle. Has anyone given this guy a Nobel Prize? The atheist then writes back and says, your answer is God without reason, saying that it's got God without reason. He says, an atheist has nothing to demonstrate. You have to demonstrate the existence of God, where it begins from your point of view and when. Who did God? The Muslim response, this is my response. What is behind the evolution? That's the question. The process is not a big deal. What is behind the process? What made it come to existence? That's what you can't explain. The atheist then writes back and says, you still don't answer what and where is God. Don't use mystic world, be realistic. God is in ourselves, or things like then and don't mean a thing. We don't understand sensical language or thing like that are so generic. The Big Bang exists. We demonstrate it. It's how it happened before. We don't know how more I could be clear, but this don't give me the right to attribute everything to God. The time is a parameter of the world, not of universe. There's no start and there will be no probably an end. The materials transforms, not disappears. So Big Bang has transformed, not created things. So he's saying that the Big Bang transforms things. It doesn't actually create things. He says, why are you acting like you don't understand? You believe only because we cannot explain or don't know something? I repeat, you have to demonstrate because you say everything is made by God. I only don't know, but this doesn't give me the right to say it was God. He says, come on, be serious. Don't ask us things that science cannot explain. A lot of years ago, people couldn't explain the fire and thought it was God. Maybe one day we will have answers for all, but for now both of us, believe or not, can't explain all things. My response: just because you can explain the mechanism, such as flames consist primarily of carbon dioxide, water vapor, oxygen, and nitrogen, does not mean you have removed God. Because he gave the fire analogy, saying that back in history, people couldn't explain fire and they said it was God. Does not mean you have removed God, since God has created all the particles to create the fire. Similarly, just because we can explain what keeps the Earth orbiting, such as the gravitational pull, does not mean God did not create the gravitational pulls. These atheists constantly blame religious people of the God of the gaps. Just because we can't explain it, you suddenly shove God in the gap, they say. Atheists are pretty much guilty of the same thing. They don't have conclusive answers on how the universe was created and all living forms being created. So they shove into the gap the forces of nature. And when you press them to demonstrate this in a lab experiment, they then retract from it and play the shifting of burden of proof back to the theists. I would argue the best explanation has always been God, whether it's been creating the particles to make the fire, or the particles in creating the systems for the gravitational forces, or the complex biological complexity of creating life forms. Unless you can create every particle from start to finish, then we have no good reason to believe in the best explanation, i.e. intelligent design. When you do achieve it, then we may consider changing our minds, but history has shown that God has never been able to be removed out of the equation, even though atheists try and persist. Thus, we remain on the best explanation. Even if atheists continue to make excuses to deny that best explanation as the explanation, it certainly does not mean God is not part of the explanation. The fact that atheists cannot create the Big Bang, all the materials that turn non-life to life, with all their intelligence, and assert it happened by nature, when they themselves cannot do it, proves there is a higher mind than both very intelligent human beings and nature, for why we point to the best explanation, i.e. God. We don't simply just sit there and shove God in there. We use our intellect and rationality to come to such conclusions. And if you wish us theists to think otherwise, well, I'm open-minded. Prove to us how it all happened without the act of this intelligent mind. As most atheists say, when confronted with the challenge, say, we will in the future. And I can assure you, if yous do, I'll put my hand up as an atheist in the future. Until you do, I will continue to believe in the best explanation so far. You may disagree with it, but you haven't given me a convincing argument just to think otherwise. Yet these atheists jump on the God the delusion campaign, when in fact they haven't provided a single shred of evidence for us to think otherwise. Yet there is mountains of evidence to the signs of intelligent design with the biological complexity in nature. And I'll post every single one of this link below on the page, and you can see the amazing design in nature. And as for the question, where did God come from or what created him? Well, I'll post a link addressing that question as well. Now, interestingly enough, the atheist comes back, and this is where we'll bury him for sure. He says, no God created the complex life forms. The process of nature over millions of years can perfectly explain how things were created. So he's still ignored my response and he persists. So my response to him is, If you believe it is perfectly explained by nature that everything is created through slow process, then I ask, for example, T-Rex dinosaurs have been extinct for millions and millions of years. Surely if nature did create these creatures millions of years ago, we would expect us by now to stop dreaming about them like those creatures in the past. And, these days we like building robots of those same dinosaurs, and we like to make animated pictures and movies about them. And we like to dream to bring those creatures back to life. But why do we dream? Why don't we just create the actual organism? And the atheist then responds back and says, well, just because we cannot do it now does not mean we cannot do it in the future. Thus, it doesn't mean a God did it. And my final rebuttal to him is, sure, I'll give you that point. However, it makes one wonder if primitive nature millions of years ago achieved creating complex living forms back in the Stone Age, like dinosaurs, how is it possible that we are in great difficulty creating them in the most advanced world? Thought-provoking, isn't it?